Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode of the Weekly Crusaders. My name is Sean Wasserkrug, and as always is Brian Michaels. And today we are talking about two movies that came out during the week of August 6th through August 12th. We've got one movie, mine, which is probably one of my favorite football films of all time. And Brian picked an old school film that probably wasn't and if I remember, Brian, because we were discussing this, you didn't necessarily want to make this pick, but you knew that I had never seen it.
I had it narrowed down to a couple, and that was kind of the tiebreaker. I'm like, let's go with the one you haven't seen. So
yeah. So I'm trying to remember. Do you remember what the other one you were going to pick was?
Young Guns.
You were going to pick Young Guns, which was up till last year a movie that I had never seen, but then I broke down and watched it. And I told you, I was like, well, I'm not going to watch it again. I just watched it like less than a year ago, and you're like, let's just pick Red Dawn. Which is what we're going to start with first. Brian's pick is the 1984, the original version of Red Dawn. I've seen neither the Hemsworth one or this one. Red Dawn came out August 10th, 1984, had a budget of $17 million, had a weekend opening of $8.23 million. It was number one its opening weekend, its only week at the number one spot, and had a finished box office of $38.38 million. It did not go international. I wonder why. It was just a domestic only. Like I said, I knew what Red Dawn was, obviously. I'm a fucking movie guy. I just never watched it. But, I know what the Wolverines, and I knew all that crap. But and then, of course, the remake happened with Hemsworth and Hutchinson and Peck and all of them. And I was just like, not really. And then I heard it was awful, because I was going to watch that Hemsworth one. And then I heard it was, just awful. Then I never watched this one just because. But this was my first time ever watching it. But we're going to go ahead and go to Brian first, because this is his film.
Yeah, so 1984's Red Dawn, the first ever PG-13 movie, as it is known.
Is it really?
It is. This was the first PG-13 movie.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Because it was earlier in this year, Gremlins and Temple of Doom had come out, and parents were all like, "Oh, these are too dark for kids. They shouldn't be PG." And so, Steven Spielberg was actually one who lobbied, "Hey, let's make an in-between rating," because it wasn't enough to be R, but yeah. So this is the first one that got that rating. That's kind of the reason it's more infamous. But this is a movie that's, again, everybody knows it. Most people have seen it. Like you said, you hadn't seen it before. Maybe some younger people haven't seen it, of course. But it's known as kind of an 80s, kind of a classic. It's not obscure enough to be a cult classic, but it's not full-blown the 80s classics. But it's a well-known movie. If you haven't seen it, it's basically these people in a small town in, I want to say, Colorado? Somewhere near the Rockies.
Definitely mountains.
Yeah, somewhere near the Rockies. Calumet is the name of the city, I believe. But basically, they're just living their life one day in town. All of a sudden, parachutes start dropping in. It is Russian and Cuban invaders, because it starts off with these title cards, which are very abrupt and kind of confusing, all the shit that's gone down. Basically, the U.S. is no longer part of NATO. They're on their own. All these other countries are starting to, ramp up to war and things like that. And so that leads up to this invasion. And then there's these group of high school kids who escaped the initial invasion, and they're living in the mountains and fighting back. That's essentially the plot of the movie. I hadn't watched this movie in a long time. I rewatch it now. It's okay. I didn't dislike it. There are things about it that are a little silly. They're very, very 80s to it. But I didn't like it as much as I remembered liking it. That's what some of these Weekly Crusaders we do are kind of revisits. And it's they're not all winners. Like I said, this is not a bad movie by any means. It's just not a great movie either. It's real notable mostly for its cast. It's got Patrick Swayze, Charlie Sheen, C. Thomas Howell, Leah Thompson, Jennifer Grey with Patrick Swayze before
3 years. I checked it during the movie. 3 years before Dirty Dancing.
Yeah, and apparently the story goes that they almost didn't do Dirty Dancing together because apparently Patrick Swayze was such an asshole to her on this movie that when they said they were casting him, she said she wouldn't do the movie with him on Dirty Dancing. But somehow they worked out their problems, apparently. So
I can see that because Swayze was kind of, at least in the movie, he's kind of a dick throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
So I get it.
As far as the older cast, you got Powers Booth is in there, Harry Dean Stanton's in there. So it's got a well-known cast to it. As far as the movie goes, it's the kind of thing where it's like I said, it's very 80s, especially it's rah rah, go America, the Russian commies are evil kind of themes to it. And a lot of the movie, more than I remember, just kind of turns into a montage of, attacks and things like that. It's kind
I think that might have been because of their budget.
I'm sure, probably because of the budget. I will say I like that it starts off right from the top. It's like it doesn't take a whole lot of time to get in the story. It's just like you meet the kids and they go to school that day, and then look out the window and in they come.
You don't really even get to meet the kids. You get to meet Swayze, Sheen, and
Yeah,
Hal.
a couple of them.
And then these like 3 others just hop on their truck as they're running away, and then we just have to like start to learn about them as it's going. So you don't even get the introduction of the leads, and then the side characters join.
Yeah. But then like after they're like, out in the mountains for a while, and what gets me is I never understood is why they kept going into town. Like I know they needed supplies and things, but they go into town, just wander around, and they even say that like they're on the lookout for these young guys who might be troublemakers, but they're just wandering around, and it's like, why wouldn't they stop you and arrest you, or not arrest you, but detain you or whatever, things like that, or kill you?
The only thing I can think of is that maybe they didn't have their photos. But that I was watching this, and I was like, there's no okay. Like they even went to like the detention center thing, and no one stopped them. So it was just...
And even the first time you go to town, they don't know that they're letting townsfolk walk around. As far as they know, they've taken over the town, locked everybody up, and killed everybody. They don't know. They just walk into town, walking around. Hey, what's going on around here?
Well, they did like look through the binoculars, like town people are walking around, they're driving around like it's normal and stuff. That's what led them to go down there.
I guess.
But yeah, it was still just... Yeah, continue.
That was a little silly. They later on meet up with, they go to one person's house, this older man they know, and get some food and supplies from him. And he has 2 girls hiding.
Change the vocalist of that.
they're like hiding in his basement.
They're his granddaughters.
And he wants to send them with the guys because he knows they can protect them better than he can here at this house. So the 2 girls, Jennifer Grey and Leah Thompson, join up with them. I will say I noticed something in this movie, this watch, that I never noticed before. It's because they said that the Russians had tried to have their ways with them and things.
There's that one scene with Jennifer Grey too.
Yeah. And then there's a scene, and then especially Leah Thompson, they keep saying that something happened to her, and she's acting like all real quiet and like traumatized and things like this.
Yeah.
And later on, Charlie Sheen's having this conversation with her, and he says something like, "You just whatever," and then he says something like, "What got up your butt?" And then she freaks out,
and like, "I will kill you."
And that's when Jennifer Grey says, "You shouldn't have said that." And I'm like, are they implying the Russians did her in the butt?
Well, because that was the one thing too. Is as I was watching it, like I paused it. It was a rated PG-13 for the sexual content, and I was like, "Where was the sexual content in this? I didn't see any sexual content."
I guess
so there's
like, reference to it.
I was like, "Did I miss something?" Because there was that scene. Was just like, are they ever gonna really just explain? Nope. I guess in 1984 they weren't allowed to explain.
Yeah, because I remembered, I knew they always referenced that they tried to rape her or whatever, but I don't remember the references, the implication that it was anal sex, but whatever.
The implication
of it. That's all you can have there. I have some other nitpicks, but you go ahead and tell me your thoughts on it.
Yeah. Like I said, what's funny for me, because I didn't want to look up the cast, because I was like, I want to be surprised with who I see. I think I get this and what's the other big 80s movie? What's that?
The Outsiders?
Yes. So I was like, where's blank blank? I was like, oh wait, that's The Outsiders, which I also have never seen The Outsiders. But I was like mixing their cast together. So I was like, wait, where's this person, this person, this person? And eventually, like about 30 minutes in, I was like, all right, I gotta look at the cast. I was like, oh, none of those people are in this movie. I was like, well, that's a bummer. But like I know C. Thomas Howell from a lot of things, but mainly for me it was the TV show Southland, where he played this really just asshole cop, which he was great at. Or
Soul Man.
What?
Or Soul Man, which we covered on Cinemasochism.
I have never. Oh no, yeah, I can't. Soul Man's one of those movies that I don't. I know I watched it. I don't remember it. So that's gonna be a definite rewatch. But like, you got Swayze, you got Sheen, you got Jennifer Grey, Leah Thompson, and that's pretty much it. I mean, you like I said, Powers Booth and Harry Dean Stanton, but but like I was just like I kept thinking about the Outsiders crew. I was like, oh, there's gonna be all these people, and I was like, oh no, because I kept thinking
Ralph Macchio, Matt Dillon.
Yes, like the little kid. I was like, isn't that supposed to be Ralph Macchio? I was like, that's so not Ralph Macchio. Nope. Stuff. Yeah, this movie, very 80s, like you said. Also, a lot of these kids, or teenagers, some of their first acting gigs, and you can tell because they're awful in this movie. Leah Thompson is atrocious in this movie. Jennifer Grey ain't fucking much better in this movie. They're both really fucking bad in this film. Charlie Sheen,
they aren't good. I'll give you that. I wouldn't say they're atrocious.
They have not seasoned themselves enough. Like their delivery of dialogue is so wooden and blocky and just whiny and like just like, am I supposed to like care about these people? Because I don't. I care about Swayze because Swayze's like trying to go for he's like Vin Diesel in the Fast and Furious movies. He's going for the Oscar. He's not in the right movie for it. But Swayze is doing his damnedest, like tears and full on emotion, and I appreciate the fuck out of it because Swayze is acting his ass off for this movie. And Charlie Sheen, he's okay at best. He's not doing anything great, but he's not awful. And then Thomas Howell, he's fine in the movie. Oh wait, Soul Man, duh. I was thinking of an older movie. I was thinking of
like we watched it together.
No, we did watch it. We did. Yes, there you go. My brain. It took me a little bit for my brain to. Yes, and I like him, but and he was fine. But a lot of it is the dialogue of this movie is very blocky. Now I will.
It's directed by the director of Conan the Barbarian, so I'm not expecting him.
I will say this though. We both watched it on Prime, which
I was going to mention this when we talked about where to watch, but go ahead. Yeah, we
always. This is from our movie trivia days and stuff like that. We always watch these movies with subtitles because a lot of times where the dialogue and audio don't match up, and we try to understand what everything's going on. If you watch this with subtitles, you're going to miss about half the dialogue in this movie because the Russians and the Cubans, when they talk, they're speaking Russian and Spanish, right? Spanish?
Yes.
Yeah. You don't get subtitles for that unless you have no subtitles on in the movie. So you get subtitles for the English. You don't get subtitles for the Russian and the Spanish unless you don't do subtitles. So I'm about halfway through this film, and there's like at least 3 scenes in this movie where I'm like, this is a lengthy acted scene. I was like, I have no idea what the fuck they're saying. I texted you, and I was like, are we not supposed to know what they're saying? You're like, nope, it's a mess up on Prime's end. Turn off subtitles. And I was like,
it's also actually it's super glitchy because actually what I said was the opposite. Is that when I watched it, is like if you turn off subtitles, because I usually don't like to watch with subtitles unless it's like unless I'm studying for trivia or something, which I don't do anymore. But if you turn off subtitles, it turned off all subtitles, including the ones that are supposed to be there, like the Russian and the Spanish. If I turned on my subtitles, then it would show me the stuff that they were saying. But the funny thing is, I was watching the movie, and the first couple scenes they had with them, it didn't translate. I'm like, okay, just an artistic decision. We're not supposed to know what they're saying, or we can kind of tell what they're talking about, but we don't need to know everything. But then it got to, like you said, there's like 1 or 2 like longer.
There's a scene where the Russian.
No way, we're not supposed to follow this.
It's a 5-minute long dialogue scene. I was like, what? No, something's up. Like, because I almost was gonna pull up Wiki and like, okay, are they gonna describe what these scenes are? Because I don't know what the hell. And then you're like, oh no, it's messed up. I was like, do I want to go back and start this movie over? It's not that good. It's not that good for me to do it. But I will say this: there are 2 scenes in particular in this movie that are cinemasochism bad.
Wow. Okay.
Like, one is when they do go into town, which once again, I agree, makes no fucking sense that they would just walk into town. First off, how did the Russians and the Cubans take over the U.S.? Because they let these fucking kids walk in undetected and spend the whole fucking day there. And they're wanted. And no one stopped them, questioned them. But if they send Jennifer Grey or Leah Thompson in there, whoosh, they're on their ass. But it's when they're at the detention center and they're talking to their father, and they're crying and stuff. Not great acting, but it's fine, for what it is. And then he's like, "You go, you leave, go. I'm never going to see you again. I'm going to die here. Fine." And they leave, and he's like, sneak back out, be quiet, like don't get caught. And then he just goes, "Avenge me!" I was like, "What the? What?"
If nothing else, the soldiers are gonna be like, "Oh, they're gonna avenge you." Okay.
Exactly. It's like, who are you talking to? And boom, you're caught. But it was so out of like, what the hell are you doing, dude? Like, did the director really say, I want you to scream at the top of your lung, avenge me 3 times, even though they're supposed to be sneaking back out of town. Don't worry, the Russians and the Cubans ain't gonna fucking know. I was like, I'm just sitting there going, wow, that was awful. That was fucking awful. That was really bad. And then I rewound this scene 4 times because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't overreacting or I wasn't like seeing something wrong. And I hope you just watch this. So you're going to know the exact same. It's right when we get Powers Booth in there. They're attacking this base. It's a night mission because it's like Swayze's giving guns to the capturees and shit. And then there's this jet. There's this fighter jet. And there's this Russian pilot in the jet. Powers Booth climbs up on like the little step ladder. He's right outside the fucking window of this. And he yells for somebody to hand him a grenade. He knocks on the window, shows the Russian the grenade, flips him off, and then drops a grenade like in the fuel thing or whatever. And then the jet blows up. This is not on Powers Booth. This is on the fucking fighter. Do you know exactly what I'm talking about yet?
I know the scene you're talking about. I don't know who the...
This is what the fighter jet does. Knock on the window from Powers Booth, looks over, gets flipped off, shows a grenade, and the guy just goes... The inside of his jet lights up, knowing the explosion's happening. And he's just like...
What's he going to do at that point? He can't get out fast enough.
I was like, what? This guy was like, hey, man, don't knock on my window. Grenade? Fuck it.
Well, the thing is, they paid that back later on because near the end, where Patrick Swayze, like basically the scene Patrick Swayze gets shot. He comes out behind the one guy. Could have just shot him in the back of the head or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
20 times.
It was his downfall.
Instead, he walks out, stands in the open. Which, first of all, it could have been 20 other guys could have shot at him.
Hiding behind it. He could have done it. Yeah.
But he's walks stand up. Says, hey, lets the guy turn around, and they both shoot each other at the same time. And it's like,
which the Russian is automatic. You don't, Swayze. Which, once again, you're killing so many Russians. Why aren't you picking up their guns? Video game etiquette. Pick up the other people's guns. Their guns are more powerful than yours.
But he was just so he gets machine gunned at pretty much close range.
Yeah.
But then somehow he's also still able after that point to carry his brother across town to the playground, even though he's been machine gunned to his chest and stomach area. And then you get to the point where he walks past the Cuban generals, which first of all, they insert this scene of the Cuban general like reading this letter from home, I guess just to humanize him for some reason. I'm like, why the fuck are they humanizing this general? And then I realized
this scene happened.
It's because this scene where he's walking by carrying his brother who's dead or dying. I don't know what.
He's dying.
Yeah. And the Cuban general sees him, and instead of shooting him, he's just like puts down his gun and lets
it's one of those things where like he realizes that they were kids this whole time.
Yeah, he was kids. He kind of he's like, I don't want to be part of this war, but you can tell it because of the letter he read from home, he wants to be home and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
and it's like, what? He just killed all of your men. Also, you're just gonna let him wander off, and he doesn't know that he's shot, mortally wounded. He can see the one kid's dead. But
yeah, like Swayze looks fine for someone who's about to die, you know. But that scene with Powers Booth and the fighter pilot, I rewound that 4 times. I'm just like, how did they not like reshoot this scene? Because that fighter jet pilot.
I honestly didn't notice the fighter pilot's reaction to it. So I'm gonna go back and watch that.
Yes, it is cinemasochism bad. I was like, this is so atrociously awful. I can't believe they let this stay in the movie. And then you get like this brief glimpse of Dirty Dancing with Jennifer Grey and Swayze, and then right when you're like, oh, here's their chemistry, bam, dead. It's like, no, fuck her, she dies right now. But that's the one part that always pisses me off in movies, and this movie does it, and they do it in other movies too, where like someone finds food, and they got a whole group with them, and they send her out there. Hey, go make sure the coast is clear. Go find food, and then she just starts eating this one. Like, bitch, this food's for everyone, and you're biting into like 4 different things. Like you bought into 2 separate apples, and like. Hello.
Well, and then there's the scene where they do get a hold of all that food, and they all just start gorging themselves. I'm like, I know you're hungry, but this has to last you folks. You know,
they're like, we're running out of food, and all we got's meat that you've killed. Yeah, that we fucking killed. Like, calm down. Like, it was like there's so many like just like we need to go back. What about our families, man? Like, did you not see everyone get fucking shot up and dead? Like, And then you have the one moment where they're all like lined up to get shot, and they all just start singing like "America the Beautiful" or whatever. And I'm just like, fucking run!
Well, there's
I'd
10
rather
guys standing there with
I'd rather
guns.
get shot running than just standing there singing, because they have all this space. There's like so many of these guys that aren't like, or when as they're getting shoot, there's a lot of people that just kept standing there. I just would have fake fell and like pretended to die. Like there's like at least 3 dudes as everyone is standing there getting shot. They're just okay, I'm like, you could have like fallen in the hole, pretended to
die
dead.
bravely, patriotically.
It's such bad acting.
My only other thing with the movie is actually the thing I didn't understand was what was going on with Leah Thompson and Powers Booth. Because like
yes, they try to
they almost seem like they're kind of flirting at first, but then he's like, she's asking about his wife, he's telling her stories about his wife and things like this, and
I didn't know if maybe she was dead, or he says he doesn't know if anyone has survived because
she's calling him old man and things like this, and so it's like there's clearly like I'm like they can't be doing like any kind of relationship because it's age difference and it's just kind of weird and she's all traumatized then, but yet then when he dies, she's like, I'm never gonna love again. I'm like, the fuck? Were you in love with him?
Thing is, like, once I had to turn the subtitles off just so I could hear the Russians and the Cubans, I couldn't make out anything Leah Thompson said through that fucking film, because she's screaming and blubbering through this whole damn movie. And then right before Charlie Sheen and Swayze go out there to basically die, she's like, no, don't go. And I was like, didn't you just threaten to kill this motherfucker earlier because he told you to, like, what crawled up your butt? All he did was ask you to, like, wash some dishes because you weren't doing anything. And it's just like, Leah Thompson is like the worst fucking part of this. She's so fucking bad in this movie. And Jennifer Grey's better, but not by much. And the whole time watching, I was like, okay, this is 2023. This movie is 39 years old. It's older than me. Acting has come a long way since then. It's either I can say this movie's fucking trash and garbage and horrible, or I can go, it's 1984. Writing wasn't, but then it's like, then you have movies like Godfather and Jaws and stuff. It's like, where's the line? Where do I allow for this shit? And then where do I go?
I'd watch this 10 times before I'd watch Godfather. Just saying.
I also agree, because Godfather to me is boring.
As much as I think this movie, I still enjoy this movie. It is not a classic. But it's one that, like, if I watch it every 10 years.
Here's the funny thing is I watched it, and then I was like, does Red Dawn, the new one, end the same way? I was like, I'm not gonna watch it, but I went to Wikipedia and I read it. Oh my god, I read the ending of it. I was like, that sounds worse. And I didn't even love this one, but it sounds worse than this. Because it was like, was it Danny doesn't, or Danny unknowingly, like, swallows a tracker? And they, instead of killing him, they basically just, like, he just stays back.
I honestly don't remember. I do want to rewatch this. I remember.
And then I don't think Matt dies either. I think Matt survives until
the new one. I will say, I think is worth watching. I mean, it's Chris Hemsworth and it's got some good actors. It's got Adrian Palicki in it. Some of it feels like people like that. And so I enjoyed the new one. It was also, though, neutered by the fact that since they didn't want to, offend the Chinese audience, they want to make sure they can make some money over there. They changed it to all some nondescript Asian country.
Well, yeah, because they didn't do the Russians and Cubans. They were going to do, like,
it was going to be China.
Yeah, but they didn't. But they were like, oh no, we don't have to box office. Yeah.
So they actually spent money to, like, CG out all the flags and patches and things like that to make it.
You can't, if you're making a fucking movie and that is something that, like, we can't do this, why'd you fucking make the movie in the first place? Like, seriously.
Well, that's the problem. They're all too worried about international.
You could have done,
back in the day, they didn't care. They would make the movie, whatever.
But yeah, it's like you could have just done the Russians again. Now you know how many times we have Russian bad guys still? Fuck, we're still dealing with Nazis and Germans and shit with Indiana Jones. But yet we're afraid. Oh no, then don't do them. Do Afghanistan. Do Iraq. Do Iran. We're still in wars with them. Like, do North Korea, or North Korea is the bad one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, wait. It's like, it's not South Korea. It's like,
but I mean, but
ones.
I enjoy the movie enough. I think this is, if you like the goodness 80s nostalgia movies, you like this. I think the new one's worth watching as well. If you do watch this, like I said, it's on Prime. Just turn on the subtitles, in my case, it might not. It apparently it's glitchy.
See,
Sometimes
no,
it does
I
it the
turned
opposite.
my subtitles on and I didn't
Yeah.
have it. I had to turn my subtitles off.
Anyway, if you don't have subtitles, mess with them and see which one works for you.
Wait until you get a Russian-Cuban scene and then test the theory.
It is available on the Roku channel as well, but I don't know how their subtitles are, so whatever.
Yeah.
But that's
And like I said, I commend Swayze. Swayze was acting his ass off in this movie. He was doing everything he could to make you care about these characters through the film. So if there's one like shining light of this movie, Swayze's acting his ass off in this. Whether it's good or not, it's besides the point.
He's trying. I don't know if
He's
it's good.
trying so fucking hard, and I commend him to hell for that, because he is so like you're watching. He's like, dude, good on you, man, because you're the only one that's actually making me believe what's going on. That and C. Thomas Howell becoming kind of like a fucking cold-blooded killer, and then the way they take him out, I'm like, he probably deserved a better death than that, honestly. He did go out like a pimp, though. He did go out like a badass, but I kind of felt like he could have had a better death. Anyway, we're moving on to my movie, and I know Brian's gonna rip this one up because I already saw his score, so I know he doesn't like it as much as I do. We're talking about one of my favorite football films of all time, 2000's The Replacements. The Replacements came out August 11th, 2000, had a budget of $50 million, had a weekend opening of $11.04 million. It was number 3 its opening weekend, its highest ranking, and had a finished box office of $50.05 million, $44.74 million domestic, and $5.32 million international. I'm a sports guy. I played sports all my life. I'm a jock. Call me what it is. So I love sports movies. Yes, they're cliche. Yes, a lot of them do the same fucking thing over and over and over and over again. I get it. But is it fun? Is it shot well? Does it have rewatchability? Replacements hits most of that. And it's got a fucking great cast. It's funny as shit. I will say this is kind of in the, I don't want to say the dark days, but this is kind of in the time frame when Keanu was not doing well. And his
I know it was a weird time for Keanu, because it was like post Matrix, pre Wick. When he I mean, he was dabbling a little bit in like straight to video stuff.
Yeah.
And then there was movies like things, smaller movies like this, and like there's The Lake House and things like that. It was just a weird time for him.
Because there are times in this movie where he's good, and then it's a lot of it's the dialogue when he's talking to was it Abigail or Annabelle? Annabelle. It's a lot of times when she's talking to him, and he just does this like, oh man, or yeah, this week, and it's like, dude, just. Are you even trying in this movie? Like,
I will say this did feel a little bit more like a paycheck for him.
Yeah, he's half acting through this, but when he actually tries in this movie, he's great. But it's a lot of it is honestly like just the one-on-one dialogue with him and her that he literally is just like, I don't care. But I know this movie's not perfect. I will die on this hill. I know this movie's not great in some terms, but we all have movies that we love in spite of XYZ. Brian's got Brothers Grimsby and Movie 43, which are trash comedies. But Brian loves them, and collectively the rest of the world hates these movies, but Brian loves them. This movie I think most people enjoy, but best football movie ever for a lot of people, maybe not so much. I love this one because whenever it's on TV, I watch it. I quote this movie endlessly. Even though there's so much wrong in the football aspect of this film that drives me insane, especially the third act when Martell crosses the picket line. They're like, hey, Shane, it's over. It's like, you do realize you can have backup quarterbacks, right? Like, he's just second string now. Like, you don't send him home. What if Martell gets hurt?
First of all, their entire replacement lineup had no backups for anybody.
Exactly.
At least not that we were introduced to. Maybe they were background characters. I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, what if Martell gets hurt first series of the game? Who's the quarterback? Like, also Shane gets there like in 5 minutes flat from his houseboat to the stadium. He gets there in 5 minutes.
Also, you can't say this one guy can't cross the picket line and decide to play, because then if the contract is disputed, the union's going to boot him out of the union. So
exactly. There's so much wrong. Like, there's also like the first play of the second half. They do kick ass, which is where they basically just beat the shit out of the Dallas players. It's like, first off, all those players, they're kicked out of the game. Like, they ain't playing anymore. So the movie's over at that point because Falco and all of them, they're done. They're out. there's so many blocks in the back during this movie, like penalties that aren't being called. There's little things here and there that's like a football purist is gonna go, well, that can't happen. That fucking wouldn't happen. All this kind of stuff. Mainly the second string quarterback thing is really fucking stupid. But I will. I would.
You gotta overlook all that and just enjoy it as a comedy.
No, exactly. Enjoy it for what it is. I would be lying though if in my times playing like Madden or football games in general, when you can create a team, there are always two teams that I've created. One is the Miami Sharks from Any Given Sunday with Willie Beeman, and the replacement, the Washington Sentinels with Shane Falco and everybody. Because I love this team. Orlando Jones is fucking hilarious in this movie. Freaking Jon Favreau is a fucking insane maniac in this, and he's so damn good in this. Is it Bill Nighy?
No,
it's Ray Fiennes. It's Ray Fiennes. Ray Fiennes. Duh. Ray Fiennes.
No, Risa Fiennes.
I knew I was gonna say it's wrong.
He was the lizard in Spider-Man. Yeah.
Fucking hilarious in this movie. I love him. This movie just makes me miss Gene Hackman. Wiry. I don't know what that means. Wiry. Say wiry. Also, David Denham.
So young.
So young, playing the blonde thing. The fucking cheerleaders. I had such a crush on Brooke Langton because of this movie, because she's just hot as hell in this film. And then you got the rest of the strippers, they are strippers, but cheerleaders in the movie. I have so much fun with this movie. And I enjoy this. Like I said, it makes me miss Gene Hackman as an actor, because he doesn't, he retired. He doesn't do it anymore. Because I love him in this film. There's so much. I love the sumo guy. I love the offensive lineman. Son of a bitch. Oh, son of a bitch. Son of a bitch. It's just like, it's just so many little things here or there. And I'm not going to do the whole thing where we just quote movies, because we make that same argument with like Napoleon Dynamite, where we're like, why is this movie funny? And then you just quote a line that doesn't make it funny.
Yeah.
But I enjoy the hell out of Replacements. I know Brian's not as big of a fan. Doesn't mean you don't like it, but I know you gave it like 2.5 stars, which is lower than Red Dawn.
I think so. Was it 3?
Oh no, you did give it 3. You did give it 3. Last week was 2.5 for what the hell did I have last week?
I don't remember.
I can't remember. But anyway, Replacements. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed it right in the head, where it's like, I don't love this movie near as much as you do, but I enjoy it. I don't dislike it. It's all right. I will say, first of all, let me just say, you can see we're shoulder to shoulder there. Worst poster and cover art maybe ever of any movie. I hate that picture. But anyway, that's just a whole side.
It's literally the only thing that you find. Like, there's no other ones. Actually, no, there's one weird one where, like, she is, like, hanging on him, like, her legs wrapped around him, and he's just, like, holding her sideways like this, and then Hackman's just kind of standing there off on the corner.
It's like they had, like, a $20 budget to make their posters for this movie. But that's just the amount to get out of the way. We got a connection for this week. This is directed by Howard Deutsch, director of Some Kind of Wonderful, also the husband of Leah Thompson, and father of Zoe Deutsch. So got a connection between our two films this week. So I mean, I like the director. I've liked some other stuff he's done. Most of the cast I like. Some of them, like for me, like Orlando Jones, for instance. Like at the time, I remember thinking he was funny. Now I watch him like,
well, this was like height Orlando Jones. This was like Evolution, and like he was a 7-Up guy, and he was always an actor.
But he comes across as really annoying to me. I mean,
he literally has like 3 good scenes in the movie, but the 3 good scenes are funny, And I like I said, it literally he's good when he's with the group. When he's on his own, he's not that funny. But I mean, he's got also something. Or speaking of subtitles from Red Dawn, because I watched this on Vudu. I have the digital copy for it. The subtitles are wrong in this movie. There are so many times where I'm like, that is not what they said. Like there's the scene where the kick-ass scene where he goes, Clifford Franklin's looking for a new hoe. Subtitles goes, Clifford Franklin's looking for a new home. I'm like, that is not what he said at all.
Somebody was half asleep at the wheel when they were making that.
There's at least a handful of times in this movie where I was like reading this, I'm like, that is not at all what he said. It's like, is this one like dubbed for like edited for TV? Because that is not what they said in this movie.
Let's go down to the subtitle episode of Weekly Crusaders.
Yeah.
Or the anti-subtitle.
Yes.
So the movie started out, and I didn't remember much about this movie. I'm not sure I've seen this movie maybe one time since it first came out in like 2001. I think I watched it one time in between there somewhere, probably, but it's been at least a good 10 years since I've watched this movie. So it started, and I'm not gonna lie, it started off kind of rough. I'm like, I don't really like any of these characters. I don't think they're all that funny, even though they think they are. You know, we got to parts like the dance tryouts where all the girls are doing it. I'm like, this is just cringy and not funny at all. Things like this. So I was a little worried about that. I will say in the second half of the movie, I thought it got a lot better. Once they're a team, once they're playing,
Once they've established their connections and teammates.
I did enjoy it a lot more. I mean, there are parts of it like that, like the "I will survive" moment in the
which
jail.
not even an urban legend anymore. It's a legit thing. Keanu refused to dance. That's why he wears the hat. That's a stand-in. Because Keanu at that time was kind of up in his own ass. He refused to dance in that dance sequence. So that's why when he gets up, he immediately puts the hat on. Even though it's like 2 shots.
But he was doing the line dancing in the bar, or where it was.
No, he didn't. No, it was he never danced in the bar.
I swear you saw his face dancing one time. But I did notice he was noticeably absent at the end of the movie when they were singing it.
You saw him on the corner. You saw him in the corner, and then as soon as they started dancing, he backed off.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he refused to do the dance, and that's why he wears a hat. Because while they're starting, he's got his hat on. He's like, yeah, and then as soon as they go to start, hat's on, and then as soon as the coach, he takes the hat right off, so you can see it's Keanu. He refused to do it.
But I remember in theaters, like people thinking that scene was so hilarious, and I'm watching it now. I'm just like, this is kind of dumb. It's like maybe it's just
if anything, all you did was acknowledge that Jon Favreau has definitely done line dancing because he was the only one like. His
hands on the buckle going, he's all out.
Honestly, the funniest part is that David Denham just kept dancing because he's deaf and he doesn't know. Like that was the funny part, was that no one was going to stop him. That was the funny part of that moment.
The best part with David Denman, I thought, was when he was doing sign language to the girl across the bar. And she's like, jumps up and runs over there.
Okay.
Okay, the stripper cheerleaders, I got to comment on because they went to
have so many flags thrown. They would have had so many flags thrown on that.
Well, here's the problem though: is like the stripper cheerleader thing, completely stolen from basketball, which did it 3 years earlier. It's like they already did this kind of thing where you're distracting them with the stripper cheerleader.
Yeah, but we're not expecting the basketball people and the replacements people to be necessarily the same fans.
But I'm just saying the joke had been used by that point. So people like me who had seen basketball many times, it was like, and then they cut back to them like 50 times during each game.
They did. Especially in the end. Especially in the last game, it was you had to have Falco, the game, cheerleaders, Falco, and then Hackman. You went bam, 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 bam. And I was like, even I was watching this, I'm like, man, they are really going back to them. And there's always a couple times where you would catch Brooke Langton, and she was not doing the dancing as well. Like she was like half in it. Like there's one point where she literally like all the cheers.
Well, especially when they were doing like the slutty or stripper type moves, I figured that was intentional because like
no, this was just when they were just doing regular moves.
Oh, okay.
Like she's like she's not front in the front. She's like in the second or third row. And I started like normally I would be watching. I always watch the stripper girls, but like this time I was like I'm watching her, and I was like she's not really doing the moves that well. Like at one point, and there's like one point in the middle of like a game. Like they're all doing it, and she just kind of turns around and starts doing this. I was like, I don't think a cheerleader just randomly would just break off and do like, I don't care if you're the captain.
I don't care anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's like she did that so many times, and I was just like, she's not. I mean, she looked great, but yeah, she definitely halved it like most of the time. And then like they also like had that like little thing like right in the middle of the game, like at the beginning of the last game, like Martell looks at her and she's like smiling, and I was like, wait, is she like into Martell now? I was like, that's not right. But like it was almost things like where like she's upset and then like Martell shows up and then she's like excited. It's 2 quick scenes, but it was weird because like they did it to the point where like Martell's like looks at her, or the camera makes it look like they're looking at each other and they're acknowledging and smiling like there's a thing going on. Mm-hmm. And it's like there isn't, but it's a mislead of the camera. It's like, why are you doing that? You know, but like I said, I enjoy so much of this movie. I know it's not a perfect film, but it's one of those movies that it makes me happy. I love these movies.
It's a perfectly serviceable distraction, like a sports comedy. It is a very typical sports comedy. It's got all the same, cliche moments to it, especially in the final game and things like this. But it's the kind of thing where if you just sit down and enjoy it, It's fun to watch.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's like if I was going super critical movie critic brain, it's a 3.5 star movie. But for me, it's a 4.5 star because I've watched this movie like probably over 30 times in my life because it was always on TBS or TNT, and I'd always catch it and I just rewatch it over and over again. And like, there's so many like quotes in this movie that I like love, like the quicksand quote. I've used that quote when I was playing baseball and coaching baseball. I was like, you know, I was like, that is some deep shit. Like that's a legit thing that happens. And then of course, and I even posted it last night on Facebook was his little huddle speech. And I've used that speech before too. And I love that. You know, it's just like pain heals, chicks dig scars, glory lasts forever. It's like, it's such a great line. I love it. And like I said, when Keanu wanted to act in this movie, he acted really well. Also, I also like when every time they flipped his truck, his rear view mirrors would have been gone. Like
Well,
his rear view mirrors always.
Also, I mean, I know it's a movie and all, but it's like, I'm sorry, but if these guys come flip your truck, you call the police on them. It's like,
but remember that's
analyze your vehicle. These guys attack you in a bar. They
dropped that one line where it's like, why aren't they in jail? Because they're winners. And also, I love how at the very end of the movie they act like Gene Hackman does like the monologue. He's like,
which I hated that narration because like if there had been narration throughout, it'd be one thing, but out of nowhere they have his little narration at the end.
He throws it in at the very end. He's like, you know, there was no ticker tape parade and blah 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 blah. I'm like, I get that, but it's like, I'm sorry, Falco's gonna get signed to a contract. The two lineman guys, they're going to get signed to a contract. The sumo guy's going to get signed to a contract. Definitely.
The way the entire Pack Stadium was cheering for him, you'd think they'd have some kind of parade or something.
Yeah, it's like Nigel definitely is getting signed to a team. It's like,
well, maybe not because he was willing to sell out for.
They don't know, but they don't know that. They don't know. But are you kidding me? The way the NFL is today, with his leg, he'll get signed. You know, and then it's like definitely what am I gonna say? Brian, tight end. He's a great tight end. He's just deaf. You know, it's like he'll get most of these players are gonna get signed, or at least on our practice squad. Like their careers aren't over because bear in mind they just played, and because they even said it before the game started. Dallas, not my Cowboys, but hey, Dallas represent. They were the Super Bowl champions. This scrub team beat the Super Bowl champions. You're telling me that all these fucking players are just going to go back to working at the mini mart and being a cop? Like, are you telling me that Jon Favreau's character wasn't going to get signed to a contract with as great as he was defensively? Hell, or even what's his name?
The only thing I can think of is it being the whole thing with unions, because you crossed our picket line, you cannot be a part of our unions. They couldn't become NFL players in the union.
Yeah, but players were crossing that picket line after like week 1, week 2.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is in this movie universe, they're like, oh, individual players can cross it.
Yeah, no. So it's like at the end of this movie, it's like all these players are still going to be playing football, and they might not be starters.
Even if not the NFL. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like maybe not starters, but if anything, they'll be playing Canadian football or arena football, or because that was all going on at this time. Hell, XFL was about ready to start then. Like, trust me, they're fine. They're all going to be fine. And Flacco definitely would be a starting quarterback for like the fucking Browns by next season, or even McGinty. I'm sure there's going to be some coach that's going to get fired, and they'll sign Jimmy, and Jimmy will be like kind of like Any Given Sunday thing with De Niro. He got fired and he got hired by another team, and he brought Jamie Foxx with him. Are you telling me that he won't get hired by another football team and he'll bring Shane? Like, come on, man. Like, you can do the monologue acting like they're done, but they're fucking not. They will be playing in the NFL the next season. But yeah, I love this movie. This movie is not.
It's on Peacock.
It's on Peacock. Okay, so yeah, it's watchable elsewhere, or like I said, you can rent it or whatever. But if you guys enjoyed this episode, hit that like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. Of course, you can follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Next week we'll be back again for another episode. I'm in love with this episode already.
This time I pick a sports movie.
Yes, and he picks one of my favorites of all time. It was one of those, like, I want to pick this, and Brian's like, I want this. I'm like, fucking take it. Like, good. I was like, I was having a hard time deciding between my movie and this, because it's like I felt like I talked about this movie already many, many times, and I hadn't. And Brian's like, I want this. I'm like, thank you, because my movie is a 2000. Was it 2000s?
2000s, yeah.
Yeah, comedy that is just. started the careers of a lot of people who are going strong today. And a lot of this was like somewhat kind of their first films, or their first films where they were actually given stuff to do. It's hilarious. It is a classic, even for 2000s. It is a classic. I can't wait to rewatch that and just laugh my ass off. And of course, Brian's film is one of my favorite sports films of all time. I've also watched this movie ad nauseum. I'm so excited to talk about both these movies. Like, I'm actually like generally excited to watch these both and like shoot this fast. But that'll be next week. Also, this week we've got Voyage of the Demeter coming out. We were literally discussing this before the show. I don't know if I'm going to get to watch it or not this week. If I do, there'll be a review. If not, oh well. Also, Netflix is Gal Gadot's Heart of Stone. I'll probably have a better chance of watching that than I will Voyage of the Demeter, so we'll see. Nothing really else coming out this week, but next week we've got Strays and Blue Beetle coming out. So we got stuff coming out. So we're nearing that end of summer where we're starting to get hit with the last second summer beats.
The end of the summer, we can see just how bad we did on those predictions for box office.
Oh, it's horrible. It is horrible because I don't think any of us had Barbie in the top 10. But we will be back here at the end of the month, if not the first week of September, to go over our fall preview, which we will then go over our summer predictions that we completely bombed. So we'll have that episode coming up here the next few weeks. But yeah, until next time, we are the Movie Crusaders. I'm Sean Waskrug. That is Brian Michaels. And until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch some movies. Go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.